I stood alone in my bedroom, staring at the emerald green dress hanging on the closet door. The dress I'd spent weeks searching for, the one that would complement my stepdaughter Vanessa's wedding colors without overshadowing her. The dress that now seemed to mock me with its uselessness. I had rehearsed this day for months, how I would help her with her veil, how we would share a private moment before the ceremony, how I would finally give her the vintage pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother. But none of that would happen now. "Claire, I think it's better if you don't attend the wedding," she had said over the phone 3 days ago, her voice cold and distant. No explanation, no room for discussion, just a door slamming shut after 15 years of being her mother in every way that mattered. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The house was suffocating in its silence. I checked my phone again, even though I knew there would be no message. The ceremony had started 30 minutes ago. I had made coffee I couldn't drink, wrapped a gift she would never open, and set out photo albums filled with memories that suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else's life. I gripped the edge of the dresser, trying to anchor myself to something solid as the reality washed over me. She didn't want me there. After everything we had shared, after all the years, the tears, the laughter, I had been erased. When the doorbell rang the following evening, I almost didn't answer. I was still wearing yesterday's clothes, my hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, eyes swollen from tears I'd finally allowed myself to shed. I opened the door expecting a package or perhaps a well-meaning neighbor. Instead, I found myself face to face with Richard, Vanessa's biological father. A man who had been little more than a shadow in her life since walking out when she was 4. He looked older, of course, his dark hair now streaked with silver, but I would have recognized him anywhere. He didn't say hello. He simply asked, "Can we talk, Claire? There's something you need to know." Before all of this, before the rejection, before the broken heart, before the wedding that happened without me, there was love. Real, messy, hard-earned love. The kind that doesn't come instantly but grows slowly, deliberately, with each obstacle, overcome and each moment of connection. That was my life with Vanessa. I met her when she was 4 years old, a solemn little girl with wary eyes and a habit of hiding behind her father's legs whenever a stranger approached. Daniel and I had been dating for 6 months before he finally introduced me to his daughter. "She's having a hard time," he explained. "Her mother left, and now she's afraid everyone else will too." I understood her caution. I'd grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes where I was always the outsider, never quite belonging. I knew what it was to fear attachment, to guard your heart against possible rejection. Our first real connection happened over cookies. I'd brought ingredients to their apartment, nothing fancy, just pre-made dough and colorful sprinkles. I didn't try to win her over with grand gestures. I simply set everything on the kitchen counter and started rolling little balls of dough. After watching silently from the doorway, Vanessa edged closer, curious despite herself. "Would you like to help?" I asked, not looking directly at her, keeping my voice casual. She didn't answer, but she climbed onto a chair beside me and reached for the sprinkles. By the end of the afternoon, her hands were sticky with dough, and she had smiled, just once, but it felt like winning the lottery. That's how we built our relationship, not in dramatic moments, but in small everyday acts of showing up. I braided her hair before school. I sat beside her bed during nightmares. I learned that she loved strawberries but hated blueberries, that she was afraid of thunderstorms but fascinated by lightning, that she needed her stuffed elephant named Trunk to sleep soundly. When Daniel proposed a year later, Vanessa was the one who handed me the ring, her small face serious as she asked, "Does this mean you'll be my mommy now?" The early years weren't easy. Vanessa tested boundaries as children do. especially children who have experienced abandonment. She would sometimes push me away, declaring, "You're not my real mom," during arguments, words designed to wound. But I never took the bait. I would simply say, "No, I'm not your birth mother, but I am here, and I love you." After these storms passed, she would often seek me out, climbing into my lap or slipping her hand into mine. Wordless apologies I always accepted. When she was 7, we made it official. Daniel and I married in a small ceremony in our backyard, with Vanessa as our flower girl. But the more meaningful moment came 3 months later when the adoption papers were finalized. Though Richard had initially contested it, he eventually signed away his parental rights, acknowledging what had been true for years. He wasn't involved in his daughter's life. The day the papers came through, we took Vanessa for ice cream and gave her a necklace with 3 intertwined circles. "This is us now," Daniel explained. "A forever family." She wore that necklace every day for years. As Vanessa grew, so did our bond. I was there for her first period, for her first heartbreak, for the science project that won first place, and the soccer game where she missed the winning goal. I advocated for her when teachers underestimated her abilities, celebrated her victories no matter how small, and held her through disappointments. We developed our own rituals: Sunday morning pancakes, holiday movie marathons, summer road trips where we'd sing off-key to 80s music. By the time she was a teenager, the fact that I hadn't given birth to her seemed like the most irrelevant detail of our relationship, which isn't to say we didn't have our struggles. The teenage years brought new challenges: arguments about curfews and dating, phases of rebellion where she'd shut me out. But even during the worst of these storms, there remained an undercurrent of connection. She might slam her bedroom door, but she'd still text me from inside to ask if we had any more hot chocolate. She might roll her eyes at my advice, but I'd later find she'd followed it. We weathered these years the way we'd handled everything else together, imperfectly, but with unwavering commitment. When Vanessa left for college, I cried for 3 days straight. Daniel teased me gently, reminding me that Boston was only a 2-hour drive away, that she'd be home for holidays and summers. But it wasn't just the physical distance that affected me. It was watching her step into adulthood, into a life where I would no longer be central. I worried, as all parents do, whether I had done enough, taught her enough, loved her enough to prepare her for the world. The first few months, we spoke daily. She'd call with updates about classes, new friends, the terrible dining hall food. I'd listen eagerly, storing away these details like treasures. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. It was during her sophomore year that things began to shift. The calls became less frequent, the conversations shorter. At first, I attributed this to the natural progression of growing up. She was busy, establishing independence, as she should be. But when she came home for Thanksgiving, something felt different. She was distant, preoccupied, checking her phone. Constantly. When I asked if everything was all right, she gave a tight smile and said, "Everything's fine, Claire." Not Mom, as she had called me since the adoption, but Claire. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Daniel noticed nothing amiss, attributing her mood to end-of-semester stress. But mothers, even stepmothers, have a sixth sense for these things. Something had changed, and my instinct told me it wasn't just the normal growing pains of young adulthood. Still, I didn't push. I reminded myself that parenting is largely an exercise in letting go, in trusting the foundation you've built while accepting you can't control the structure that rises from it. The real revelation came during spring break of her junior year. Vanessa had initially said she wouldn't be coming home, that she was going to Florida with friends. But plans changed at the last minute, and she arrived unannounced, bringing with her a young man named Tyler. Tall, confident, with an easy smile and expensive clothes, He charmed Daniel immediately. I was more reserved, not out of dislike, but from a sense that there was something calculated about his affability. We met in my economics class, Vanessa explained, her eyes rarely leaving his face. Tyler's family has a finance firm in New York. The way she said it carried weight, as though this connection to wealth and status was significant in ways I couldn't yet understand. That weekend was the first time I felt like a visitor in my own family. Vanessa and Tyler spoke about people and places unfamiliar to us, referenced inside jokes we weren't part of, discussed future plans that had never been mentioned in our phone calls. When I tried to connect, asking about her classes, suggesting we bake cookies like we used to, she responded with polite disinterest. Maybe later, Claire. Tyler and I are going to meet some of my high school friends. Claire again, not Mom. The distance growing with each use of my first name. After they left for their outing, I found myself in Vanessa's room, not snooping exactly, but straightening up, a maternal habit. A book had fallen from her nightstand, a journal, open to a page filled with her familiar handwriting. I knew I should close it, respect her privacy, but a name caught my eye. Richard, her biological father. The man who had been absent for most of her life, who sent birthday cards sporadically at best, who had signed away his parental rights without a fight. According to the journal, they were in contact again. Had been for months, meeting for coffee when he was in Boston for business, exchanging emails, rebuilding a relationship I hadn't known was being reconstructed. I closed the journal and sat on the edge of her bed, my heart pounding. It wasn't that I begrudged her a relationship with her birth father. I had always said I would support that if it was what she wanted. It was the secrecy that hurt, the fact that this significant development had been deliberately kept from me. From us. I didn't mention the journal to Daniel or confront Vanessa. I told myself she would share this when she was ready, that forcing the issue would only push her further away. But the knowledge sat between us like an uninvited guest for the remainder of her visit. The shift accelerated after that weekend. Our phone calls became increasingly perfunctory. She came home less frequently, often citing commitments with Tyler's family or internship opportunities that always seemed to coincide with holidays. When she did visit, she spent most of her time on her phone or out with old friends. The easy intimacy we had once shared was replaced by a formal politeness that felt worse than outright conflict would have. At least in conflict, there is engagement. This felt like slow erasure. I tried everything I could think of to bridge the growing gap. I sent care packages to her dorm, suggested weekend trips, just the two of us, asked questions about her classes and friends. Her responses were always pleasant but distant, as though she was humoring a well-meaning acquaintance rather than speaking to the woman who had raised her. Daniel, ever the optimist, insisted this was just a phase. All kids go through this, he said. She'll come back around. I wanted to believe him, but the knot in my stomach told a different story. The summer before her senior year, Vanessa announced she would be interning at a firm in New York rather than coming home. Tyler's family arranged it, she explained over the phone. I'll be staying with them in their Manhattan apartment. When I expressed disappointment, suggesting maybe we could visit her instead, her response was lukewarm at best. Maybe toward the end of the summer. Things will be pretty busy. We didn't see her at all that summer, or the following fall, or at Christmas when she told us last minute that she had been invited to spend the holidays with Tyler's family at their chalet in Aspen. The engagement announcement came via social media, a perfectly staged photo of Vanessa and Tyler on a beach at sunset. Her hand extended to display a diamond that probably cost more than our mortgage. We hadn't even known they were at that stage of their relationship. Daniel called her immediately, effusive with congratulations. I waited until the evening, wanting a private conversation. When I finally reached her, her excitement seemed to dim as soon as she heard my voice. I wish you had told us you were thinking about engagement, I said gently. This seems so sudden. It's not sudden for us, she replied, a defensive edge to her voice. And I'm not a child who needs to ask permission. Of course not, sweetheart. I just thought, we've barely seen you this past year, and marriage is such a big step. Tyler and I know what we're doing. The implied contrast hung unspoken between us. Tyler, who came from wealth and connections, versus us, middle-class educators who had given her love but could offer little in the way of social advancement. His parents are already helping us plan the wedding. It's going to be at their estate in Greenwich. The wedding planning proceeded without us. Vanessa shared minimal details, always with the caveat that decisions had already been made. When I offered to go dress shopping with her, she informed me she had already found her gown during a private fitting arranged by Tyler's mother. When I suggested hosting a bridal shower, she said that Tyler's sister had taken care of it, an exclusive affair at a Manhattan hotel to which, notably, I was not invited. Each exclusion felt deliberate, a message being sent, though never directly, stated. 3 months before the wedding, we finally met Tyler's parents, Lawrence and Catherine, at an engagement dinner they hosted at an upscale restaurant. Catherine greeted me with air kisses and immediate commentary on my appearance. Vanessa mentioned you were earthy, she said, eyeing my simple dress with barely concealed disdain. Throughout the dinner, they dominated the conversation with references to their social connections, summer homes, and the extensive plans they had for the children's future. Vanessa sat beside them, nodding along, occasionally glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Part defiance, part something that might have been shame. As the evening progressed, it became increasingly clear that decisions had been made about the wedding, and beyond, that positioned Tyler's family at the center and relegated Daniel and me to the periphery. They spoke about how Vanessa would join the family business after graduation, how they had already found the couple an apartment in their building, how their club memberships would be extended to include her. Through it all, Vanessa remained silent, a polished smile fixed on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. In the car ride home, I finally voiced what had been building all evening. Vanessa seems different with them, like she's playing a part. Daniel sighed. She's just trying to fit in with Tyler's family. It's important to her. But why? She never cared about status or money before. Remember how she used to say she wanted to teach, like us? Now suddenly she's talking about corporate law and summer homes. People change, Claire. Their dreams evolve. This doesn't feel like evolution. It feels like erasure. The word hung between us, uncomfortably accurate. That's what had been happening. A systematic erasing of the Vanessa we had raised, replaced by a version palatable to the world she now aspired to join. The final blow came 3 weeks before the wedding. We had received the formal invitation, thick cream cardstock with gold lettering, addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Daniel Harrington, my name an afterthought attached to his. But what caught my attention was the schedule of events. The rehearsal, dinner hosted by the groom's parents, the bridal luncheon hosted by the groom's mother, the post-wedding brunch at the groom's family estate. Nowhere in this carefully curated wedding weekend was there space for us, for me, to fulfill any traditional parental role. I called Vanessa that evening, determined to have an honest conversation. When she answered, her voice was distracted, as though I had interrupted something important. I've been looking at the wedding schedule, I began, trying to keep my tone light. I was wondering when we might have some time together before this ceremony. I have something special I'd like to give you. Oh. A pause. Things are pretty packed, Claire. Catherine has arranged everything down to the minute. Surely there's some time for us to have a moment? I've been saving my grandmother's pearl. Earrings for you. I always thought you'd wear them on your wedding day. Another pause, longer this time. That's thoughtful, but I'm already wearing the diamond drops Lawrence and Catherine gave me as an engagement gift. They match the tiara. Tiara? This was the first I'd heard of such an accessory. Yes, it's been in Tyler's family for generations. All the brides wear it. Her voice had taken on a rehearsed quality, as though reciting something she had been told. Look, I need to go. We're meeting with the florist in 10 minutes. Vanessa, wait. I took a deep breath. I feel like I'm losing you. Like you're becoming someone I don't recognize. Ever since you met Tyler's family? Don't. Her voice turned sharp. Don't make this about you or about them. This is my life, my choice. I'm not questioning your choice of Tyler. I'm concerned about how you've shut me out, of this entire process. It's like you're embarrassed by us. You wouldn't understand. The words came out quick, defensive. You've never understood what it means to want more, to be part of something important. And your father and I, the family we built, that wasn't important? Silence stretched between us, taut with unspoken feelings. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold, distant. I have to go now. Vanessa, please. Actually, I've been meaning to tell you. I think it would be better if you didn't come to the wedding. The words hit like a physical blow. What? It's nothing personal. It's just, things are complicated right now. With Richard coming and… Richard? Your biological father is coming to the wedding? The revelation left me breathless. Yes. He and I have been rebuilding our relationship. He's been very supportive of my choices, of my future with Tyler. It would just be simpler if you weren't there. Less confusing for everyone. Less confusing? I repeated, struggling to process what I was hearing. Vanessa, I'm your mother. I raised you. You're my stepmother, Claire. You chose to take that role, and I'm grateful for what you did. But things are different now. I'm an adult making adult decisions about my life and my wedding day. Her voice softened slightly, as though offering a consolation prize. Daniel will still walk me down the aisle, of course, but I think it's best if you respect my wishes on this. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence, her words replaying in my mind. You're my stepmother. You chose that role, as if the 15 years of loving her, raising her, being her mother in every way that mattered could be reduced to a role I had voluntarily assumed and could now be dismissed from. As if our relationship had been a long audition for a part I had ultimately failed to secure. Daniel was horrified when I told him, insisting he would talk to Vanessa, make her understand how unreasonable she was being. But I stopped him. If you force the issue, she might ask you not to come either, and she needs you there, even if she thinks she doesn't need me. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, encouraging him to attend a wedding I had been explicitly barred from. But parenthood, even step-parenthood, is often about putting your child's needs above your own heart's desires. The days leading up to the wedding passed in a fog of grief and disbelief. Friends expressed outrage on my behalf, offered to intervene, to speak to Vanessa. I declined all such offers. This was between her and me, a rupture I still couldn't fully understand but had to accept. Daniel came home from the rehearsal dinner quiet and withdrawn. When I asked how it had gone, he simply shook his head. It's like watching a play where everyone has a script except me. Richard was seated at the head table with Vanessa and Tyler's parents. I was at a side table with some distant cousins. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect June day that seems designed for celebrations. Daniel left early, dressed in the expensive new suit we had bought for the occasion, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. I kissed him goodbye, told him to take pictures, to tell Vanessa I was thinking of her. Then I was alone in the silence of our home, surrounded by memories of a family that seemed to exist now only in the past tense. I tried to keep busy. I cleaned obsessively, rearranged bookshelves, started and abandoned several projects. But as the hours crept toward the 4 p.m. ceremony time, I found myself standing in my bedroom, staring at the emerald green dress I had chosen so carefully. Without fully deciding to do so, I put it on. Did my hair and makeup as I had planned to for this day. Fastened around my neck, the silver locket that contained a photo of Vanessa as a child. I wasn't going to crash the wedding. I respected her wishes too much for such a scene. But there was something important about marking this day, about acknowledging what should have been. At 4:15, knowing the ceremony would now be underway, I poured myself a glass of the champagne we had been saving and raised it in a silent toast to the daughter who no longer wanted me as her mother. I allowed myself, finally, to cry. For the little girl who had once asked if I would be her mommy. For the teenager who had sought my advice on everything from acne to college applications. For the young woman who had somehow decided that the family we had built was something to be ashamed of rather than cherished. The doorbell rang at 8:30 that evening. Daniel wasn't due back until the following day. He was staying overnight at the hotel where the reception was being held. I considered not answering, but the ringing continued, insistent. When I finally opened the door, the last person I expected to see was standing on my porch. Richard, Vanessa's biological father, the man who had been absent for most of her life, but was now, apparently, welcome at a wedding I had been excluded from. He looked older than I remembered, his once dark hair now salt and pepper, lines etched more deeply around his eyes. But I would have known him anywhere. He didn't smile. He didn't offer pleasantries. He simply asked, "May I come in, Claire? There's something you need to know." I hesitated for a moment, my hand gripping the edge of the door. Richard stood there in a rumpled tuxedo, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck, looking nothing like the polished wedding guest I would have expected. My first instinct was to shut the door, to protect myself from whatever fresh pain this man might bring. But curiosity, or perhaps some deeper need for answers, won out. I stepped back silently, allowing him to enter. He moved past me into the living room, his eyes scanning the space as if searching for something. They settled briefly on the family photos that still lined our mantel: Vanessa's high school graduation, our trip to the Grand Canyon, her college acceptance celebration. Evidence of a life he had chosen not to be part of. "You're still wearing your dress," he observed, his voice neither judgmental nor sympathetic, merely stating a fact. I crossed my arms over my chest, suddenly self-conscious. "I didn't have anywhere else to wear it." Richard nodded, running a hand through his hair. "I understand that feeling more than you might think." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small silver flask, offering it to me. When I shook my head, he took a quick swig himself before returning it to his pocket. I wasn't invited either. Not really. This caught me off guard. But Vanessa said that I was coming to the wedding, that we'd been rebuilding our relationship. He gave a bitter laugh. That's what Catherine and Lawrence wanted her to believe, what they orchestrated. I sank onto the edge of the sofa, trying to make sense of his words. I don't understand. Richard remained standing, his posture rigid, hands shoved deep in his pockets. I received an invitation 3 months ago, out of the blue. After years of my attempts to reconnect being ignored or rejected, suddenly Vanessa wanted me at her wedding. It seemed suspicious. So I started asking questions, reaching out to old mutual friends. That's when I learned about you and Daniel, about the life Vanessa had here, about the adoption. He paused, his expression darkening. And about Tyler's family. The Prestons, I supplied. Yes, the illustrious Prestons. The way he said the name carried a weight of history I couldn't yet decipher. Did you know Lawrence Preston and I went to college together? That we were once business partners? I shook my head, struggling to follow this unexpected turn. We started a tech company right out of school, had some initial success, secured decent funding, but we had different visions for the future of the business. Lawrence wanted to sell to a larger corporation. I believed in what we were building and wanted to stay independent. Richard's jaw tightened at the memory. Things got ugly. Lawrence went behind my back, made deals I wasn't aware of. By the time I realized what was happening, he had effectively pushed me out of my own company. The legal battle drained me financially and emotionally. That's when my marriage to Vanessa's mother fell apart, when I couldn't be the father Vanessa deserved. The revelation hung in the air between us. I had always assumed Richard's absence from Vanessa's life had been simple abandonment, a father unwilling to shoulder responsibility. The possibility that there was more to the story had never occurred to me. So when Lawrence's son became engaged to my daughter, Richard's voice caught on the word, a rare display of emotion. I knew it wasn't coincidence. Lawrence Preston doesn't believe in coincidence. He believes in strategy. You're saying Tyler pursued Vanessa because of your history with his father? The suggestion seemed far-fetched, the stuff of soap operas, rather than real life. Not exactly. Richard reached into his other pocket and pulled out a folded document. I'm saying Lawrence recognized Vanessa's name when Tyler first mentioned her. And being the calculating man he is, he saw an opportunity for revenge, for amusement, or perhaps just to remind me one last time of his superiority. He handed me the document. It was a printout of an email chain sent from Lawrence Preston to his wife Catherine, dated shortly after Vanessa and Tyler had begun dating. Just confirmed V. Harrington is indeed Richard Miller's daughter, the one he abandoned after the lawsuit. Poetic justice that our son is now involved with her. She has no idea of the connection. Tyler says she rarely speaks of her biological father. Let's keep it that way for now. Could be useful leverage if needed. I felt sick as I continued reading through the emails, watching as Lawrence and Catherine strategized the systematic separation of Vanessa from her family. From me. There were discussions of how to make her feel special, included in their world of privilege, while subtly emphasizing the limitations of her upbringing. They spoke of the importance of reshaping her narrative before the wedding, of ensuring she developed the right kind of loyalty. Where did you get these? I asked, my hands trembling as I held the papers. Catherine's assistant, an old friend who owed me a favor. She's been quietly copying these exchanges for months, troubled by what she was witnessing. Richard took the documents back, folding them carefully. I confronted Lawrence at the reception tonight, showed him what I had. He didn't even have the decency to deny it. Just smiled that smug smile of his and said, "She traded up, Richard. You should be grateful." The cruelty of it took my breath away, not just toward Richard, but toward Vanessa, using her as a pawn in an old vendetta, manipulating her feelings, her perceptions of her own family. Does Vanessa know? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Richard shook his head. I tried to tell her, pulled her aside during the reception, tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. Said I was trying to ruin her special day, that I was jealous of the Prestons' success, that I had no right to come back into her life and cause problems. His voice was heavy with resignation. She asked me to leave, so I did. Then why are you here? The question came out more sharply than I intended. Richard finally sat down, perching on the edge of the armchair across from me. Because she deserves the truth, even if she's not ready to hear it from me. Because what the Prestons are doing isn't just petty revenge, it's emotional manipulation of the worst kind. He met my eyes directly. And because you raised her, Claire. When I couldn't, or wouldn't, you stepped in and gave her everything I should have. You're her real parent, regardless of blood or legal documents. If anyone can reach her, make her see what's happening, it's you. I laughed, a short, pained sound. She explicitly uninvited me from her wedding. She's made it abundantly clear that I'm not welcome in her new life. Because they've poisoned her against you. These emails, he gestured to the folded papers, they detail exactly how they did it. Small comments, subtle comparisons, creating situations where she would feel embarrassed by her background. They've been working on her for 2 years, Claire. Systematic, calculated alienation. The revelation should have made me angry, and part of me was. But mostly, I felt a profound sadness for Vanessa, manipulated by people who saw her not as a person to love, but as an instrument of revenge. And beneath that sadness, a flicker of something else. Hope, perhaps. The possibility that the distance between us wasn't simply my stepdaughter rejecting me, but the result of deliberate interference. "What do you expect me to do with this information?" I asked. Richard stood, straightening his rumpled jacket. "That's up to you. I've done what I came to do, shared what I know. The rest." He shrugged, moving toward the door. "I failed Vanessa once. I'm not arrogant enough to think I can swoop in now and fix everything. But you've earned the right to fight for her." He paused at the threshold. "For what it's worth, from what I've heard about the life you built with her, you were twice the parent I could have been." After he left, I sat motionless, the documents spread across the coffee table before me. My mind raced with implications, with possible courses of action. I could confront the Prestons directly, expose their manipulation to Vanessa, demand they acknowledge what they'd done. But would that help? Or would it just push Vanessa further away, reinforce the narrative they'd constructed about me being jealous, unable to let her go? I picked up my phone, scrolled to Vanessa's number, then set it down again. Tonight was her wedding night. Whatever came next would have to wait until morning. I gathered the documents, placed them in a folder, and finally changed out of the emerald dress that now felt like a relic from another life. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, my mind replaying moments from the past 2 years. Instances where Vanessa had pulled away, comments she had made that now took on new meaning in light of what I'd learned. I remembered her growing fascination with the Prestons, lifestyle, her increasingly critical view of our middle-class existence, her gradual adoption of their values and perspectives. Had I been blind not to see the orchestration behind these changes, or had I simply trusted too much in the strength of our bond, believing that 15 years of love couldn't be undone by the allure of wealth and status? Morning brought no clarity, just exhaustion and a dull headache. Daniel called around 8, his voice tight with barely contained anger as he described the reception. How Richard had been escorted out, how Vanessa had been tearful afterward, how Lawrence had smoothly taken control of the situation, turning it into further evidence that Richard was unstable, untrustworthy. "I wanted to leave too," Daniel admitted. "The whole thing felt wrong, Claire." Vanessa kept looking at Catherine. For approval after every toast, every dance? It wasn't like our daughter at all. I hesitated, unsure whether to share what Richard had told me. Part of me feared Daniel would dismiss it as conspiracy thinking, the bitter imaginings of a man who had lost everything. But keeping silent felt like betrayal of a different kind. "Richard came here last night," I said finally, "after he left the reception." "What? Why would he?" "He had evidence, Daniel. Emails between Lawrence and Catherine. They've been deliberately separating Vanessa from us, from me especially." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. Then softly, "I'm coming home. Now." While waiting for Daniel, I found myself drawn to Vanessa's old bedroom, preserved largely as she had left it when she went to college. Trophies from soccer tournaments lined the shelves, alongside dog-eared paperbacks and framed photos. I sat on the edge of her bed, running my hand over the quilt we had made together for her 16th birthday, each square representing a memory, a milestone in her life. There, the fabric from her first-grade play costume. There, a piece of the t-shirt she wore to her first concert. There, a swatch from the dress she wore when Daniel and I married, officially becoming a family. The evidence of our life together was everywhere in this room. How could she have forgotten all of this? How could anyone have convinced her that this history, this love, was something to discard rather than treasure? Daniel arrived home in a whirlwind of barely contained fury. I had never seen him so angry, not in all our years together. He paced the living room as he read through the emails, occasionally cursing under his breath. When he finished, he looked up at me, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I should have seen it," he said. "All those weekends with the Prestons, those trips to their vacation homes, she came back different each time, more distant, more critical. I thought it was just a phase, normal young adult stuff, but they were deliberately turning her against us. Against me specifically," I corrected gently. "They were careful with you. They needed you to walk her down the aisle, to maintain the appearance of family approval." Daniel slumped onto the sofa beside me, suddenly looking older than his 52 years. "What do we do now?" It was the same question I had been asking myself all night, and I still didn't have a clear answer. "I don't know. Confronting the Prestons directly seems pointless. They've already demonstrated they have no conscience about what they've done. And Vanessa," I sighed. "She's built a wall against us, against me. If I try to tell her about this, she'll just see it as me trying to sabotage her happiness. So we do nothing? Let them win?" The despair in Daniel's voice mirrored my own feelings. "No," I said, with a conviction that surprised me. "We don't let them win, but we also don't play their game. We don't manipulate or scheme or try to force Vanessa to see the truth. We just love her. The same way we always have. Consistently, unconditionally, without expectation of return." Daniel looked skeptical. "And that's going to undo 2 years of systematic brainwashing?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I know that fighting fire with fire will only create more destruction. The Prestons have power, money, influence, but they've never had what we have. Real love for Vanessa. Not as an accessory or a pawn, but as a person. That has to count for something, eventually." We spent the day developing a plan. Not a counter-manipulation, but a quiet campaign of constancy. We would not confront Vanessa with the emails. We would not demand she acknowledge what had been done to her, to us. Instead, we would simply be present, available, the same parents we had always been. We would send regular messages of love without expectation of response. We would mail small gifts that reminded her of our shared history. We would invite without pressure, reach out without demands. "It's going to be hard," Daniel warned, "loving without reciprocation." "Yes," I agreed, "but it's still better than not loving at all." The first test of our resolve came sooner than expected. That evening, as we were preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. Daniel answered it, then called my name, his voice carefully neutral. I walked into the hallway to find Vanessa standing there, still in her going-away outfit from the wedding, a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice small, uncertain. I stepped back wordlessly, allowing her into the home she had grown up in, but now regarded with a stranger's eyes. She walked into the living room, perching awkwardly on the edge of the sofa as though afraid to fully commit to being here. "Tyler and I were supposed to leave for our honeymoon this afternoon," she said, addressing a point somewhere between Daniel and me. "But I couldn't go." I sat across from her, careful to maintain distance, even as every maternal instinct urged me to rush to her, to gather her in my arms as I had done countless times throughout her childhood. "What happened?" I asked simply. Vanessa's gaze finally met mine, a flash of the vulnerable girl I had raised visible beneath the polished exterior the Prestons had crafted. "Richard came to the wedding. He said things about Lawrence and Catherine, about their intentions toward me. She twisted her hands in her lap, the massive diamond on her finger catching the light. I didn't believe him. I thought he was just trying to cause trouble. But then this morning, I overheard Tyler on the phone with his father. She paused, swallowing hard. He was laughing about how they had finally put Richard Miller in his place. How I was the final checkmate. He said, her voice broke. He said Lawrence had called it poetic justice that his son had married Miller's cast-off daughter. The pain in her face was unbearable to witness. Whatever anger or resentment I might have harbored dissolved in the face of her raw hurt. This was still my daughter, the child I had comforted through nightmares and heartbreaks, through disappointments and fears. When I confronted Tyler, he tried to deny it at first. Then he got defensive, said I was overreacting, that it was just guy talk between him and his father. Vanessa looked down at her hands, but the way he said it, like I was being unreasonable, for being upset about being used as a pawn in some decades-old vendetta, like I should be grateful they had elevated me from my modest beginnings. Daniel moved to sit beside her, not touching her, but close enough to offer support. What did you do? I left. She gave a small, broken laugh. Just packed a bag. And walked out while he was still explaining why I shouldn't be upset. I didn't know where else to go. The admission seemed to cost her, a recognition of how thoroughly she had severed other connections in pursuit of the Prestons' approval. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotions, her shame, our caution, the collective uncertainty about what came next. I thought of the emails upstairs, the evidence that would validate her suspicions beyond any doubt. But looking at her now, already devastated by what she had overheard, I knew this wasn't the moment to overwhelm her with the full extent of the deception. You always have a place here, I said finally. No matter what. Vanessa's eyes filled, with tears. How can you say that? After how I've treated you, after I banned you from my own wedding. Because that's what parents do, Daniel answered simply. We love through the hardest parts. I don't deserve it, she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. I moved then, closing the distance between us, taking her hands in mine. Love isn't about deserving, Vanessa. It never has been. She broke then, collapsing against me as sobs shook her body. I held her, this grown woman who suddenly felt as small and vulnerable as the 4-year-old I had first comforted decades ago. Daniel encircled us both, his arms strong and steady. We stayed that way for a long time, a family reconnecting through grief, through forgiveness, through the simple act of being present in pain. Later, after Vanessa had calmed somewhat, we moved to the kitchen. I made tea, the same chamomile, blend I had served her through childhood illnesses and teenage breakups. Some rituals transcend time, offering comfort through their mere familiarity. She cradled the mug between her palms, looking smaller without the armor of her expensive clothes and careful makeup. I don't know what to do now, she admitted. Everything. I thought I was building, my future with Tyler, my place in their world. It was all based on a lie. Not everything, I corrected gently. Your accomplishments, your education, your talents, those are real. Those are yours. But I let them convince me that none of that mattered without the right connections, the right background. She stared into her tea as if seeking answers in its depths. I let them make me ashamed of where I came from, of who raised me. The pain in her voice was palpable, but beneath it, I heard something vital, the beginning of awareness, of seeing clearly what had been done to her. Not just by the Prestons, but by her own choices in response to their manipulation. We all make mistakes, Vanessa, Daniel said. We all get seduced by things that seem to offer what we think we want. This was more than a mistake. She looked up her expression haunted. "I systematically cut you out of my life. Especially you, Claire. I let them convince me that because you weren't my biological mother, your role was optional, replaceable." Her voice broke on the last word. How do you even begin to forgive something like that? I thought carefully before answering, wanting to be honest without adding to her burden. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, a decision made once and completed. It's a process, one that will take time, for all of us. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. But it begins with this, with telling the truth, with being willing to rebuild. "I don't even know who I am anymore," she confessed. "These past 2 years, I've been so focused on becoming the person they wanted me to be that I lost sight of who I actually am." "Then that's where we start," I said. "Not with blame or recrimination, but with rediscovery, with remembering who you were before the Prestons, before you felt you needed to be someone else to have value." For the first time that evening, a ghost of a smile touched Vanessa's lips. "That sounds overwhelming, but also right." We talked late into the night, not solving everything. That would take much longer than a single conversation, but laying the groundwork for healing. Vanessa shared more details about how the Prestons had systematically influenced her perceptions, how Catherine had constantly made subtle comparisons that diminished our family, how Lawrence had presented Richard's story in a light that made him seem not just absent, but actively malicious. "They were so skilled at it," she said. "Nothing obviously cruel, just constant small suggestions that made me question everything I had believed about my life." "That's how the most effective manipulation works," Daniel observed. "Not through force, but through doubt, through making you complicit in your own deception." As midnight approached, exhaustion finally overtook us. I showed Vanessa to her old room, watching as she took in the space that had once been the center of her world. She trailed her fingers over the quilt, the bookshelves, the photos that documented her journey from solemn child to confident young woman. "I forgot so much," she murmured, more to herself than to me. Or made myself forget. I hesitated in the doorway, uncertain of my place in this moment. "The memories are still there," I said finally. "They're part of you, even when you're not." Looking at them, she turned to me then, vulnerability raw on her face. "I'm so sorry, Claire, for all of it." "I know," I said simply. "Get some rest. We can talk more tomorrow." As I turned to leave, her voice stopped me. "The earrings, your grandmother's pearls. Do you still have them?" The question caught me off guard. "Yes, of course." Vanessa nodded, a decision forming. Behind her eyes, "I'd like to see them. Tomorrow, if that's okay." I understood what she was really asking. Not just to see the earrings, but for a tangible connection to the heritage I had tried to share with her, the one she had rejected. In favor of the Prestons' diamonds and status. "Of course," I said again, emotion making my voice rough. "Good night, Vanessa." "Good night, Mom," she replied, the familiar term tentative but deliberate. As I closed her door and made my way to my own bedroom, I felt something shift within me, a loosening of the grief that had gripped me since receiving her call disinviting me from the wedding. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be legal complications from her abrupt departure, emotional fallout from the Prestons' deception, difficult conversations about trust and forgiveness. Vanessa would have to confront not just what had been done to her, but her own participation in it. But for the first time in years, we were facing in the same direction again. Not erasing the past or pretending the hurt hadn't happened, but acknowledging it as part of our shared story, a difficult chapter, but not the end of the book. As I finally drifted toward sleep, I found myself thinking not of what had been lost, but of what might yet be reclaimed. The pearls would be waiting for her in the morning, their quiet luster a testament to what endures when the flashier brilliance of diamonds proves false. Morning arrived with a gentle persistence, sunlight filtering through the curtains as I awoke to the unfamiliar yet achingly familiar sound of movement in the kitchen. For a moment, I thought I had dreamed the events of the previous day. Richard's revelation, Vanessa's return. But as I pulled on my robe and made my way downstairs, the reality solidified. My stepdaughter was standing at the stove, awkwardly attempting to make pancakes the way we used to on Sunday mornings throughout her childhood. "I hope it's okay that I started breakfast," she said when she noticed me, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. She gestured at the mess of flour and eggshells around her. "I'm a bit out of practice." "Of course it's okay." I moved to stand beside her, not taking over but offering quiet guidance as she struggled with the consistency of the batter. This small domestic scene felt monumental, the first tentative step in rebuilding what had been systematically dismantled. Daniel joined us, sleep-rumpled and cautious, as though afraid too much enthusiasm might shatter this fragile reconciliation. We ate together at the kitchen table, the conversation stilted at first, carefully avoiding the larger questions that loomed. Instead, we spoke of small things: a new coffee shop in the neighborhood, a book Daniel was reading, the unseasonably warm weather, normal family breakfast talk, the kind that forms the invisible scaffolding of belonging. As we cleared the dishes, Vanessa finally broached the subject we had been circling. "I need to figure out what happens next," she said, her voice steadier than it had been the night before. "I left my phone at the hotel. By now, Tyler and his parents will be—" She trailed off, unable to articulate the storm that was surely brewing. "What do you want to happen next?" I asked, emphasizing the word want. For too long, others had been dictating her path, manipulating her choices. It seemed important to center her own desires now. She leaned against the counter, absently twisting her wedding ring. "I don't know. Part of me wants to confront them, make them admit what they did. Another part just wants to disappear, start over somewhere they can't find me." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "But neither of those feels right. Neither feels like me." "Who is you, Vanessa?" Daniel asked gently. "Not who the Prestons wanted you to be, or who you think you should be now. Who are you at your core?" The question hung in the air, profound in its simplicity. Vanessa was silent for a long moment, considering. "I used to know," she said finally. "Before all of this, I had such clear ideas about who I was, what mattered to me. I wanted to teach, to work with kids who needed extra support the way you both did." She glanced between Daniel and me, a flash of her younger self visible in her expression. Somewhere along the way, that got buried under the Prestons' expectations, their values. I nodded, understanding all too well how easily one's authentic self could be submerged beneath others' projections. Those original dreams, those values, they're still part of you, Vanessa. Dormant, maybe, but not gone. She twisted the ring again, then deliberately slipped it off, placing it on the counter with a small, definitive click. "I think I need some time to remember who I am without anyone else's influence, without trying to please anyone. The Prestons, Tyler, even you two." "Of course," Daniel said, though I could see the effort it took for him not to reach for her, not to try to fix everything immediately. "Whatever you need." "Would you—" Vanessa hesitated. "Would you come with me? To get my things from the hotel? I don't think I can face them alone, not yet." The request was so straightforward, so practical, yet it represented something profound. Our daughter asking for our support, acknowledging her need for us. "Of course," I said again, echoing Daniel, "whenever you're ready." Before we left, I retrieved the pearl earrings from my jewelry box. They were simple, elegant, small perfect spheres that had belonged to my grandmother, then my mother, before coming to me. Not flashy or ostentatious like the diamonds the Prestons had given Vanessa, but carrying a different kind of value, the weight of genuine heritage. I found Vanessa in her old bedroom, running her fingers over the spines of books she had loved. As a teenager, pausing at a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird that we had read together when she was 14. I held out the small velvet box without comment, watching as she opened it. "They're beautiful," she said softly, lifting one to examine it in the morning light. "So different from what I've been wearing lately." "They're real," I replied simply. "In every sense of the word." She looked up, understanding the layers of meaning in my statement. "I'd like to wear them. Not just today, but whenever these next steps happen. As a reminder." "They're yours," I said. "They always have been." The drive to the hotel was tense, all of us aware of the confrontation that likely awaited. Vanessa sat in the back seat, her posture rigid, the pearl earrings gleaming against her skin. I had expected to feel nervous, perhaps even afraid to face the people who had so deliberately worked to separate me from my daughter. Instead, I felt a strange calm. Whatever manipulations, whatever social power the Prestons wielded, they had lost their most effective weapon when Vanessa recognized the truth. The lobby of the upscale hotel was bustling with late-morning activity, guests checking out, staff efficiently moving between tasks. If anyone recognized Vanessa as the bride who had disappeared from her own honeymoon departure, they gave no sign. We took the elevator to the penthouse suite in silence, each preparing in our own way for what was to come. Vanessa used her keycard to enter, her hand trembling slightly. The suite beyond was immaculate, expansive, a monument to luxury that now seemed hollow, performative. Tyler stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, his back to us. At the sound of the door, he turned, his expression cycling rapidly from relief to confusion to wariness as he registered Daniel's and my presence behind Vanessa. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, disconnecting without waiting for a response. "Vanessa, where have you been? Everyone's been worried sick. My parents have been calling every hospital, Stop," Vanessa said, her voice quiet, but firm. "I'm fine. I came to get my things." Tyler's gaze flicked from her to us and back again, calculation replacing concern. "Your things? What are you talking about? We have a flight to catch in 3 hours." "I'm not going, Tyler." Vanessa moved further into the room, her steps deliberate. "Not to Bora Bora, not back to your parents' house, not anywhere with you." He laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "Is this about what you overheard?" "Babe, you completely misunderstood. It was just guy talk, nothing serious." "I understood perfectly." Vanessa began gathering her belongings, pulling open drawers, collecting items from the bathroom. "You and your father saw me as a way to hurt Richard. A final checkmate, I believe you called it." Tyler's demeanor shifted, the charming facade slipping to reveal something harder beneath. "That's ridiculous. My father and Richard have ancient history, yes, but that has nothing to do with us, with what we've built together." "What we've built," Vanessa repeated, pausing in her packing to face him directly. "What exactly have we built, Tyler? A relationship where I had to hide my background, pretend to be someone I'm not to fit into your world? Where your parents systematically turned me against my own family? Where I was so desperate for approval that I cut out the people who actually loved me?" He took a step toward her, hands outstretched in placation. "You're overreacting. My parents have only ever wanted what's best for you, to help you realize your potential." "Your parents wanted revenge." The new voice from the doorway startled all of us. Richard stood there, looking more composed than he had the previous night, though still bearing the signs of a sleepless night. "They wanted to use your marriage to my daughter as the final insult in a decades-old feud." Tyler's expression hardened. You're not welcome here, Miller. Security is already on their way. I don't need to stay long. Richard entered the room, moving to stand near Vanessa but not touching her, respecting the boundaries that still existed between them. I just came to make sure my daughter had support while she collected her belongings. Your daughter? Tyler scoffed. That's rich, coming from a man who abandoned her, who signed away his parental rights without a fight. Richard absorbed the blow without flinching. Yes, I failed Vanessa. I've never denied that. The difference is I'm not pretending my actions were motivated by love. The tension in the room was palpable, layers of deception and hurt converging in this opulent suite with its panoramic views and emptiness. I moved to help Vanessa pack, silently gathering her toiletries from the bathroom while Daniel collected items from the closet. We worked efficiently, creating a bubble of purposeful activity amid the emotional maelstrom. Tyler watched, disbelief gradually giving way to anger. You can't be serious about this, Vanessa. We just got married. We have plans, a future mapped out. A future your parents designed, she replied, zipping her suitcase with finality. One that required me to erase who I really am. And who are you exactly? His tone had turned mocking. The scholarship girl from the suburbs who lucked into my world? You think you can just walk away from everything we've built, everything my family has given you? I tensed, instinctively moving closer to Vanessa, but she didn't need my protection. She straightened, meeting Tyler's gaze steadily. What your family gave me came with conditions I'm no longer willing to accept. And yes, I can walk away. I'm doing it right now. The door burst open again, and Lawrence and Catherine Preston swept in, bringing with them an air of authority and barely contained fury. Catherine took in the scene with a swift, assessing glance, her perfectly made-up face betraying nothing beyond mild annoyance. What is the meaning of this circus? Lawrence demanded, his gaze landing on Richard with particular venom. You've been asked to leave the premises, Miller. Don't make this more embarrassing for yourself than it already is. I'm leaving, Richard said calmly, with my daughter, who has decided she no longer wishes to be part of your family's games. Lawrence's laugh was dismissive. Games? Is that what you call building a billion-dollar company while you drank yourself into obscurity? Is that what you call providing your daughter with opportunities you never could? Opportunities? I couldn't remain silent any longer. You manipulated a young woman, poisoned her against her family, all for some twisted revenge fantasy. Catherine's eyes narrowed as she regarded me. Claire, isn't it? The substitute mother. The pause before substitute was deliberate, designed to wound. I think you're out of your depth here. This is between the Prestons and the Millers, a family matter. She is family, Vanessa said firmly, moving to stand beside me. The real kind, not the kind that uses people as pawns in decades-old vendettas. Lawrence's composure slipped slightly, a flash of genuine anger breaking through. This is absurd. You're upset, confused. Whatever Richard has told you. I know about the emails, Vanessa interrupted. The ones detailing exactly how you planned to separate me from my family, how you saw me as a tool for revenge against Richard. Catherine paled slightly, her perfectly manicured hand fluttering to her throat. What emails? Tyler? What is she talking about? Tyler looked uncomfortable, caught between loyalty to his parents and the crumbling facade he'd maintained with Vanessa. I don't know what... Stop lying, Vanessa said, her voice suddenly tired. All of you, just stop. I've heard enough lies. She picked up her suitcase, her movements decisive. I'm leaving. The marriage was a mistake, one I intend to rectify legally as soon as possible. Lawrence stepped forward, his expression hardening. You signed a prenuptial agreement, Vanessa. One that significantly penalizes you in the event of divorce, especially one initiated without cause. Daniel, who had remained quiet throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. Fraud is cause, Lawrence. Manipulation and deceit are cause. And if you try to enforce that prenup, we'll make sure every detail of how you orchestrated this entire situation becomes public knowledge. The threat hung in the air, its implications clear. The Prestons valued their reputation, their standing. In society, a scandal involving manipulation and decades-old revenge plots would damage more than their pride. It would impact their business, their social position, everything they valued. Catherine recovered first, her smile tight and artificial. This is all a misunderstanding, one I'm sure we can resolve privately as family. She reached for Vanessa's arm, but my stepdaughter stepped back, out of reach. We're not family, Catherine. We never were. Vanessa looked at Tyler, a flash of genuine regret crossing her face. I'm sorry if you were just a pawn in this too. But I can't stay in a marriage built on lies. We left then, a strange procession moving through the hotel's elegant corridors, Vanessa leading, Daniel and I flanking her, Richard bringing up the rear. No one spoke until we reached the parking lot, the morning sun now high and bright above us. What now? Richard asked, breaking the silence. Vanessa looked between the three of us, her biological father who had failed her once but was trying to make amends, her adoptive father who had loved her steadily for 15 years, and me, the stepmother who had chosen to be her mother when no one else was. I saw the weight of it in her eyes, the complexity of her position. I need some time, she said finally, to process all of this, to figure out what I want my life to be now. Whatever you need, Daniel assured her. We're here, all of us, in whatever way helps you. The drive home was quiet, each of us absorbed in our own thoughts. Richard followed in his own car, an awkward but necessary addition to our fragile family reunion. When we arrived at the house, Vanessa paused on the porch, looking at the familiar front door with new eyes. It feels different now, she said, softly. Coming back. Because you're different, I replied. You've been through something transformative. Inside, we moved awkwardly around each other, the four of us creating a new dynamic in the space that had once held only three. Richard stood uncomfortably in the living room, clearly uncertain of his place in this scenario. I should go, he said finally. I've done what I came to do. Vanessa studied him, her expression unreadable. Thank you, she said after a moment, for telling the truth, even though it wasn't easy. He nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Vanessa, or for a place in your life. But if you ever want to talk about anything, I'd like that. Maybe, she said, not a promise but not a rejection either. Someday. After he left, the three of us sat, in the kitchen, the heart of our home, where so many family moments had unfolded over the years. The afternoon stretched before us, empty of plans but full of possibility. The immediate crisis had passed, but the real work of healing, of rebuilding trust, of redefining our relationships was just beginning. I should call the school, Vanessa said suddenly. The one where I volunteered during college, see if they still need reading tutors. The statement might have seemed non sequitur to an outsider, but I understood its significance. That volunteer position had been Vanessa's passion before the Prestons, before she began reshaping herself to fit their world. It represented the path she had originally chosen for herself, the values she had once embraced wholeheartedly. That sounds like a good place to start, I said, careful not to invest the moment with too much weight, though my heart swelled with hope. I think? She hesitated, twisting her hands together in a gesture reminiscent of her childhood nervousness. I think I'd like to stay here for a while, if that's okay with you both, just until I figure things out. This is your home, Daniel said simply, for as long as you need it to be. The next few weeks unfolded in a strange new rhythm, the three of us relearning how to exist together as adults, as a family recovering from fracture. Vanessa began volunteering at the elementary school 3 days a week, her face lighter when she returned from these sessions, more like the daughter we had raised. She consulted with a lawyer about annulment proceedings, a process complicated by the Prestons' resources, but strengthened by the evidence Richard had provided of their manipulation. There were difficult moments, of course. Nights when I heard her crying in her old bedroom, mourning not just the marriage, but the self she had lost in pursuit of the Prestons' approval. Days when old patterns of distance reasserted themselves, when the wounds still felt too raw for easy conversation. Times when she seemed to resent our presence as much as she had craved it. The natural ambivalence of a young adult trying to establish independence while still needing support. But there were beautiful moments, too. The evening Vanessa asked to see old photo albums, laughing genuinely at pictures of her awkward preteen years. The Saturday she suggested we revive our tradition of baking cookies together, flour dusting the kitchen counters like snow. The morning I found her wearing the pearl earrings with a simple t-shirt and jeans, not as a statement, but as a natural part of her reclaimed identity. 1 month after the wedding that wasn't, Vanessa received a large envelope in the mail. Inside was a formal settlement offer from the Prestons, a financial package contingent upon her signing a non-disclosure agreement about the circumstances surrounding the marriage and its dissolution. The amount was substantial, life-changing in its potential. She spread the documents across the dining table that evening, her expression troubled. "They think they can buy my silence," she said, tapping the figure outlined in the agreement. "Make this all go away quietly." "It's a lot of money," Daniel observed neutrally. "Money that could help you start fresh, wherever you want to go." I remained silent, watching her internal struggle play out across her face. The Vanessa who had been seduced by the Prestons' world would have signed immediately, seeing the settlement as an opportunity for the lifestyle she had come to crave. But the woman sitting before us now was someone different, someone who had glimpsed the emptiness behind that facade and was finding her way back to more authentic values. "What would you do?" she asked finally, looking up at me. "If you were me?" I considered carefully before answering, aware of the weight of the moment. "I can't tell you what to do, Vanessa. But I can tell you that in my experience, silence bought with money rarely brings peace. It just builds a prettier prison." She nodded slowly, gathering the papers into a neat stack. "I need to think about it." 3 days later, she returned, the settlement offer unsigned, attaching a brief note that simply read, "Some things can't be bought or sold. The truth is one of them." It was a risk. The Prestons could make the annulment process more difficult, could even pursue legal action of their own. But watching Vanessa post the envelope, her shoulders straight and head high, I saw something I hadn't fully glimpsed since her return. Pride. Not the hollow pride of status or appearance, but the deeper satisfaction of honoring one's own integrity. That evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Vanessa turned to me with an expression of quiet determination. "I've been thinking about going back to school," she said. "To get my teaching certification, the way I planned before everything changed." "That sounds like a wonderful idea," I replied, careful to keep my tone neutral despite the joy blooming in my chest. "You always had a gift with children." She nodded, looking out at the horizon. "The Prestons would hate it. They thought teaching was beneath me, a waste of my potential." "And what do you think?" Daniel asked, joining the conversation from his position on the steps. A small smile curved Vanessa's lips. "I think potential isn't about status or money or power. It's about impact, about whether your life makes other lives better." She glanced at me, then back at the sunset. "You taught me that, Claire. Both of you did. I just forgot for a while." The admission was simple but profound, an acknowledgement not just of the values we had tried to instill, but of my role in shaping the woman she had become. Not Claire now, not the formal distance she had adopted under the Prestons' influence, but a recognition of our shared journey, our interconnected stories. As darkness settled around us, stars emerging one by one in the deepening blue, I thought about the paths that had brought us to this moment, the choices made and unmade, the hurts inflicted and healed, the love that had endured despite everything. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be legal battles with the Prestons, emotional reckonings with Tyler, complex negotiations with Richard about what role, if any, he might play in Vanessa's future. But sitting there in the gathering twilight, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Not because everything was resolved, it wasn't, not by a long shot, but because we were facing it together, with honesty and courage, and the hard-won wisdom that comes from finding your way back to yourself after losing your way. "I have something for you," Vanessa said suddenly, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out a small, familiar object, the necklace with 3 intertwined circles that we had given her when the adoption was finalized, the one she had worn for years before discarding it during her transformation into the Prestons' ideal. "I found it in my old jewelry box," she explained, turning it over in her palm. "I'd like to wear it again, if that's okay." "Of course," I said, emotion making my voice rough. "It's yours." "Help me put it on?" She held it out to me, turning, so I could fasten it around her neck, the 3 circles resting against her collarbone. When she turned back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm sorry it took me so long to remember what this means." I took her hand, encompassing it in both of mine. "Some journeys can't be rushed, Vanessa. Some truths have to be discovered, in your own time, your own way." She nodded, a single tear escaping to trace a silver path down her cheek. "I'm just glad I found my way back." "So am I," I whispered, my heart full to bursting. "So am I." As the night deepened around us, stars multiplying in the vast canvas above, we remained on the porch, not talking much, not needing to, just being present, together, in this moment of quiet redemption. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own decisions. But tonight was for acknowledging the journey we had traveled, apart and together, and the strength we had found in returning to what mattered most. The enduring bond of family, not defined by blood or legal documents, but by choice. By love that remains when everything else falls away. By the courage to begin again, wiser and more authentic than before. In the soft darkness, with the weight of Vanessa's hand in mine and Daniel's steady presence beside us, I felt something settle, within me, a knowing that transcended the pain of the past years. Whatever came next, we would face it as we sat now, together, under the same stars, part of the same story. Not perfect, not unmarked by our struggles, but real. Beautifully, undeniably real. 6 months after the wedding that ended before it truly began, I stood in the doorway of what had once been Vanessa's childhood bedroom, watching as she transformed it into something new. The twin bed that had witnessed her adolescent dreams was gone, replaced by a comfortable reading chair and a desk strewn with textbooks and lesson plans. The walls, once adorned with posters of bands and movie stars, now held educational charts and inspirational quotes. It was no longer a shrine to her youth, but a workspace for the adult she was becoming, a student teacher pursuing the path she had abandoned years before. "What do you think?" she asked, looking up from organizing a stack of children's books she'd purchased for her upcoming practicum. "Too cluttered?" "It's perfect," I replied, meaning it. The room reflected who she was now, thoughtful, purposeful, authentic in a way that the polished, Preston-approved version of Vanessa had never been. "Those kids are lucky to have you." She smiled, the expression coming more easily these days. "I'm nervous. It's been so long since I thought about teaching as a real possibility. What if I've lost whatever instinct I had for it? Some things can't be lost, I said, entering the room to help her straighten a row of picture books. They can be buried, forgotten for a while, but they're part of who you are. The months since Vanessa's return had been a journey of rediscovery, for her, for Daniel and me, for our family as a whole. After declining the Preston settlement offer, she had faced the consequences with a courage that made my heart swell. Lawrence had indeed made the annulment process as difficult as possible, dragging it out with legal maneuvers and delay tactics. But Vanessa had persisted, refusing to be intimidated, refusing to be silenced. The victory, when it finally came, was quiet but profound. A judge reviewed the evidence, including the damning emails Catherine's assistant had provided, and granted the annulment on grounds of fraud and misrepresentation. The Prestons had not appeared in court, sending lawyers instead, a final attempt, to distance themselves from the mess they had created. Tyler had called once during the proceedings, a halting, awkward conversation that left Vanessa thoughtful but resolved. I think he was a pawn too, in his own way, she had said afterward, just a more willing one. The legal battle had been draining, but in some ways, the emotional reconstruction had been more challenging. Vanessa had to confront not just what had been done to her, but her own complicity in allowing it to happen. The ways she had permitted the Prestons to reshape her values, the ease with which she had discarded relationships that should have been sacred. I still don't understand how I let it happen, she confessed one evening, curled on the couch with a mug of tea clutched between her palms. How I became someone who could treat you that way, who could ban you from my wedding. We're all vulnerable to certain kinds of influence, I had told her, especially when it plays on our deepest insecurities. But I wasn't insecure about us, about our family, she protested. At least, I didn't think I was. Daniel, sitting across from us, had leaned forward then. Maybe not consciously, but remember how devastated you were when you found out about Richard when you were 16. How you spent months questioning your identity, wondering what else might not be as it seemed. The memory had visibly struck her. During her junior year of high school, a classmate had casually mentioned meeting Vanessa's real dad, Richard, at a tech conference with his father. The revelation that her biological father was living just 2 hours away, not permanently relocated to Europe as she had been told, had shaken her deeply. Daniel and I had explained that we'd simplified the story to protect her from the pain of knowing Richard was nearby but uninterested in maintaining a relationship. But the damage had been done, a seed of doubt planted about what else might have been hidden from her. The Prestons sensed that vulnerability, I added gently. They're experts at finding weaknesses and exploiting them, and they had a particular motivation where you were concerned. Vanessa had nodded slowly, the pieces fitting together in her mind. They made me feel special, chosen, like I belonged in their world because of who I was, not in spite of it. A bitter smile crossed her lips. But they were never interested in who I really was, only in what I represented in their feud with Richard. The relationship with Richard himself remained complicated. He had respected Vanessa's request for space, sending occasional texts but never pushing for more than she was ready to give. 3 months after the wedding, she had agreed to meet him for coffee, a short, awkward conversation that nevertheless opened the door to a cautious reconnection. He's not trying to be my father, she explained afterward. Just a friend. Maybe someone who understands what it's like to be manipulated by the Prestons. I had nodded, tamping down the flicker of jealousy that arose whenever Richard entered the picture. It wasn't about competition. There was room in Vanessa's life for both of us, for all of us who cared about her. But old insecurities died hard, even for someone who should know better. Now, watching her prepare for this new chapter in her life, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not just that she had found her way back to us, but that she had found her way back to herself, to the values and dreams that had been buried beneath the Prestons' influence. I've been thinking, Vanessa said, interrupting my reverie. She sat on the edge of the desk, hands clasped in her lap. About what comes next, after I finish my certification. You'll be an amazing teacher, I said automatically. She smiled. I hope so, but that's not what I meant. She took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. I've been offered a position at a school in Portland. Oregon? The question came out sharper than I intended, surprise making my voice rise. Vanessa nodded. It's a progressive elementary school with a special focus on students from difficult backgrounds, foster kids, children of divorce, kids dealing with loss. The kind of students who need extra support to thrive. Her eyes met mine directly. The kind of student I was when you first came into my life. The significance of her words wasn't lost on me. Portland was thousands of miles away, a complete, fresh start, far from the shadows of the Prestons' influence, far from the complicated history she had navigated these past months, far from us. When would you start? I asked, working to keep my tone neutral. Not until fall. I'd finish my certification here, spend the summer preparing. She watched my face carefully. I haven't accepted yet. I wanted to talk to you and Dad first. It sounds like an incredible opportunity, I said, meaning it despite the pang in my chest at the thought of her being so far away. Exactly the kind of meaningful work you've always been drawn to. It is. She hesitated. But it's also scary. Starting over completely, being so far from home, from you and Dad. Distance doesn't change what matters, Vanessa. I moved to sit beside her, taking her hand in mine. After everything we've been through, I think we've learned that much. She squeezed my fingers, her expression softening. I'm not running away. I want you to know that. This isn't about escaping the past or avoiding difficult emotions. It's about building something new, something meaningful. I know, I assured her. And we'll be here, cheering you on every step of the way. That's what family does. That evening, Vanessa shared the news with Daniel over dinner. His reaction mirrored my own. Pride mingled with the natural sadness of anticipating separation. But there was something beautiful in watching him support her unconditionally, without the slightest hint of trying to influence her decision for his own comfort. Portland's supposed to be amazing, he said, immediately pulling out his phone to look up information about the city. Great food scene, outdoor activities, progressive culture. You'll love it. It rains a lot, she warned, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You've always liked the rain, he reminded her. Remember how you used to sit on the porch during thunderstorms, counting seconds between lightning and thunder? The conversation flowed naturally from there, memories intertwining with plans for the future. There was a bittersweet quality to it, the recognition that our family was evolving once again, that the daughter we had raised was truly stepping into her adult life. But there was joy, too, in seeing Vanessa animated by genuine passion rather than the artificial enthusiasm she had affected during her time with the Prestons. Later, after Vanessa had gone to bed, Daniel and I sat on the back porch, the same spot where she had asked me to help her put on the necklace with the 3 intertwined circles months before. The night was cool, stars scattered across the sky, like diamonds, but real ones, not the showy status symbol kind the Prestons had draped her in. Portland, Daniel said, breaking the comfortable silence. That's far. It is, I agreed. But it feels right for her, doesn't it? A clean slate, but one she's chosen for the right reasons. He nodded, reaching for my hand in the darkness. You know what amazes me most? After everything she went through, the manipulation, the heartbreak, the public humiliation of an annulled marriage, she's still open, still believing in possibilities, in new beginnings. She's resilient, I said. She always has been, even as a little girl. Remember how she fell off the monkey bars in first grade, broke her arm, and insisted on going back to the playground the very day her cast came off? Daniel laughed softly at the memory. Not a hint of fear, just determination to finish what she'd started. That's who she is at her core, I said. The Prestons couldn't change that no matter how hard they tried. We sat in companionable silence for a while, both lost in our own thoughts. Then Daniel spoke again, his voice thoughtful. You know, when all of this started, when she uninvited you from the wedding, I was so angry. At her, at the Prestons, at myself for not seeing what was happening. But now? He paused, searching for the right words. Now I almost feel grateful. Grateful? I turned to look at him, surprised. Not for the pain, of course. Never that. He squeezed my hand. But for the clarity that came afterward. For the way this whole mess forced us all to confront truths we might have kept avoiding otherwise. For the family we're rebuilding, stronger than before because it's based on honesty, not illusion. I considered his words, finding wisdom in them. The past 6 months had indeed brought a new kind of openness to our family dynamic. Conversations that went deeper, emotions expressed more directly, truths acknowledged instead of buried. Vanessa's journey back to herself had prompted all of us to examine our own patterns, our own unspoken fears and expectations. I think you're right, I said finally. Though I could have done without the band from my stepdaughter's wedding. Part of the learning experience. Daniel chuckled, the sound warm in the night air. Fair enough, but look at where we are now, compared to a year ago. Vanessa is pursuing her true passion instead of the prestige chasing the Prestons programmed. Into her, you and I are communicating better than we have in years. Even Richard has found some measure of redemption. That last part was true, surprising as it seemed. Richard had transformed in the months since the wedding debacle, not dramatically, not in a way that erased his past failures, but in small, meaningful steps. He had maintained respectful boundaries with Vanessa, offering support without pressure. He had apologized to Daniel and me for his absence during Vanessa's childhood, acknowledging the debt he owed us for raising her with love and stability. He had even begun mentoring young tech entrepreneurs, using his own experience with the Prestons as a cautionary tale about the dangers of valuing profit over principles. Life rarely unfolds as we expect, I mused. A year ago, if someone had described where we'd be now, I would have thought they were crazy. That's the beauty of it, though, isn't it? Daniel said. The unexpected turns that lead us places. We never imagined, sometimes better than what we had planned. His words stayed with me in the weeks that followed, as Vanessa finalized her plans for Portland, as we helped her research apartments and neighborhoods, as we adjusted to the idea of her building a life thousands of miles away. There was sadness in the anticipation of distance, but also a deep pride in watching her move forward with such clear purpose, such authentic enthusiasm. The weeks turned into months. Spring arrived, bringing with it Vanessa's completion of her teaching certification. We celebrated with a small gathering at home, just us, a few close friends, and somewhat surprisingly Richard, whom Vanessa had tentatively included in the invitation. The dynamics were awkward at first, but as the evening progressed, a kind of comfortable rhythm emerged. Not forced familiarity, but the beginnings of a new kind of extended family, bound together by love for Vanessa rather than traditional roles or expectations. As summer approached, Vanessa threw herself into preparations for her move. She sold most of her designer clothes and accessories, remnants of her Preston-influenced phase, donating the proceeds to a local literacy program. She reconnected with old friends who had been neglected during her time with Tyler, rebuilding relationships that had once been important to her. She spent hours on video calls with her new principal in Portland, developing curriculum plans for her future students. Through it all, I watched with a mixture of pride and wistfulness, knowing that each step forward was also a step away. Not from our relationship, which had deepened through the crucible of recent events, but from the daily presence I had grown accustomed to since her return. I found myself savoring small moments: morning coffee shared at the kitchen table, evenings spent discussing books we had both read, weekend outings to farmers' markets and art festivals, creating memories to sustain us through the coming separation. 2 weeks before her scheduled departure for Portland, Vanessa asked if I would accompany her on an errand. She was mysterious about the destination, simply saying it was something important she needed to do before leaving. I agreed without hesitation, curious but willing to follow her lead. She drove us to a part of town I rarely visited, eventually parking outside a modest storefront with a simple sign: New Beginnings. Tattoo Studio. I raised an eyebrow, surprised. Vanessa had never expressed interest in tattoos before. This wasn't on my list of expected pre-Portland activities, I commented lightly. She smiled, a hint of nervousness in her expression. I've been thinking about it for months, actually, since right after the annulment was finalized. She turned to face me fully. I want something permanent, something that can't be taken away or manipulated, a reminder of what matters. And what did you have in mind? I asked, genuinely curious. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small sketch, 3 interlocking circles, the same design as the necklace we had given her when the adoption was finalized. I want this, she said, over my heart. Will you come in with me? The request touched me deeply. This wasn't just about getting a tattoo. It was about permanently marking herself with the symbol of our family bond, a declaration that no amount of distance or time could sever what we shared. Of course, I said, my voice husky with emotion. I'd be honored. Inside the studio, Vanessa spoke confidently with the artist, a woman with kind eyes and sleeve tattoos depicting an intricate garden scene. As they discussed placement and size, I sat nearby, taking in the significance of the moment. This wasn't the impulsive act of a rebellious youth, but the considered choice of a woman who had lost herself and found her way back, who understood the value of what she had nearly discarded. The process itself was relatively quick. The design was simple, elegant in its clean lines and meaningful symmetry. Vanessa winced occasionally but remained steady, her eyes meeting mine in the mirror, with quiet determination. When it was finished, the artist held up a mirror so Vanessa could see the final result: 3 perfect circles intertwined over her heart, a permanent testament to the family that had weathered storms and emerged stronger. It's perfect, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Then, to my surprise, she turned to the artist. And my mom will be getting one too. I blinked, startled. I will? Vanessa smiled, a mischievous gleam in her eye. If you want to, I thought. Maybe we both could. A shared reminder, especially with me moving so far away. The suggestion caught me off guard. I had never considered getting a tattoo, had always associated them with youthful rebellion rather than meaningful symbolism. But looking at the design on Vanessa's skin, understanding what it represented to her, to us, I found myself nodding. Yes, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. I'd like that. 20 minutes later, I had an identical tattoo, smaller, positioned on my inner wrist where I could see it easily, a constant reminder of the bond that transcended biology, that had survived betrayal and manipulation, that had emerged stronger through adversity. As the artist applied the final bandage, Vanessa reached for my hand, her eyes bright with tears and joy. Now we're really stuck with each other, she joked, but the emotion underlying the humor was palpable. As if we weren't already, I replied, squeezing her fingers gently. The day of Vanessa's departure arrived with the bittersweet inevitability of all significant transitions. Her car was packed, her apartment in Portland secured, her teaching position waiting. Daniel and I stood in the driveway with her, the morning. sun casting long shadows across the lawn, the air heavy with unsaid feelings. "I have something for you," I said, pulling a small package from my pocket, a going-away present. Vanessa unwrapped it carefully, revealing a leather-bound journal with her initials embossed on the cover. "It's beautiful," she said, running her fingers over the smooth surface. "Open it," I encouraged. Inside, on the first page, I had written a simple message. For new beginnings, new stories, new growth, with roots that remain strong no matter the distance. All my love, Mom. The remaining pages were blank, waiting for her to fill them with the experiences and insights of her new life. "I thought you could write to me," I explained. "Not emails or texts, but real letters about your students, your discoveries, your journey. And I'll write back, old school style, with stamps and everything." Vanessa smiled, clutching the journal to her chest. "I'd like that, a lot." The final goodbyes were emotional, but not devastating. There were tears, of course. How could there not be with a separation of this magnitude looming? But there was also laughter, shared memories, promises for future visits. And underneath it all, a profound sense of rightness, of watching Vanessa step confidently into a future she had chosen for herself, based on her authentic values rather than external expectations. As she drove away, waving through the open window, Daniel wrapped his arm around my shoulders. "She's going to be amazing," he said, his voice rough with pride and emotion. "She already is," I replied, watching until her car disappeared around the corner. Later that day, as I tidied the house that felt both emptier and somehow fuller with Vanessa's departure, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from her, accompanied by a photo of her dashboard with the map navigation showing she was already several states away. "Just crossed the state line," the message read. "Miss you already, but feeling good about this journey. Thank you for everything, for loving me when I didn't deserve it, for believing in me when I'd lost belief in myself, for showing me what real family means. I'm carrying you with me, always. Not just in the tattoo, but in everything I am." I touched my wrist, feeling the slight raised outline of the 3 intertwined circles beneath the bandage. A permanent reminder of a bond that had been tested but not broken, a connection that had proven stronger than deception, manipulation, or distance. As I moved through the house, I found myself pausing at the family photos that lined our walls. Vanessa at various ages, the 3 of us in different settings and seasons, visual testimony to the life we had built together. But my gaze lingered. Longest on the newest edition, a photo taken just yesterday, showing Vanessa, Daniel, and me standing arm in arm on the front porch, all wearing matching tattoos, 3 circles, 3 lives, intertwined by choice and love rather than obligation or expectation. The journey had been unexpected, painful at times, filled with moments I would never have chosen or anticipated. From being banned from Vanessa's wedding to standing in our driveway watching her drive toward a new life 3,000 miles away, none of it had unfolded according to plan. But perhaps that was the greatest lesson in all of this, that our deepest connections aren't maintained by adherence to a script, but by the willingness to navigate uncharted waters together, to face difficult truths, to rebuild when necessary. As evening settled around the house, I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea watching the stars emerge one by one. Portland was experiencing rain, according to Vanessa's latest text, but here the sky was clear, vast, the same constellations visible to both of us despite the distance between. There was comfort in that thought, that some constants remain, regardless of geographical separation or life changes. My wrist tingled slightly beneath the bandage, the freshly inked circles a physical manifestation of what I had always known, but now understood more deeply than ever. That family is not defined by blood or legal documents or shared history alone, but by choice, by the daily decision to love, to forgive, to remain present even when it's difficult. by the courage to see each other clearly, flaws and all, and choose connection anyway. Vanessa had made that choice when she walked away from the Prestons, manipulation and wealth, when she faced the painful truth of how she had been used, when she began the hard work of rebuilding with authenticity rather than pretense. Daniel and I had made that choice when we welcomed her back without recrimination, when we supported her journey toward rediscovery without imposing our own expectations. Even Richard, in his limited way, had chosen honesty over continued absence, truth over comfortable fiction. The path forward would hold its own challenges, of course. Distance would test our connection in new ways. Vanessa would face obstacles in her new career, her new city. The wounds inflicted by the Prestons' manipulation would take time to fully heal. But I felt a deep certainty that we would navigate whatever came next with the hard-won wisdom of our recent journey, with eyes open, hearts engaged, and an unshakable commitment to authentic connection. My phone chimed again, another text from Vanessa, this one containing no words, just a simple image, her wrist held up against the backdrop of a Portland sunset, the three circles clearly visible, a silent affirmation of what bound us across the miles. I touched my own matching tattoo in response, a gesture she couldn't see but would understand, and whispered into the gathering darkness, always connected, always family, no matter what. And in that moment, under the same stars that watched, over my daughter and her new beginning, I felt a peace that transcended the pain of separation, a gratitude that overshadowed the memory of rejection. Because what had been meant to divide us, the Prestons' manipulation, Vanessa's misguided choices, my own fears and insecurities, had ultimately led us to a deeper understanding of what family truly means. Not perfection, not uninterrupted, harmony. But the choice to remain connected through all life's unexpected turns, to love without conditions, to find our way back to each other even when the path grows difficult to see. Some bonds, once forged in genuine love, can bend under pressure, but never truly break. They remain, like the three circles etched into our skin, a constant reminder of what endures when everything else falls away. And in that endurance lies the true beauty of family, not the fairy tale version, but the real, messy, resilient connection that weathers storms and emerges stronger, deeper, more authentic than before. As night settled fully around me, I sent one final text to Vanessa before heading inside. Good night, my brave girl. New chapter, same story, the one where we love each other through everything. Sleep well. Then I touched the three circles on my wrist once more, a tactile reminder of what could never be taken away, and carried that certainty with me into dreams of tomorrow's possibilities. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.